Hi, friends. Your pal Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about American Religion and the film Bring Her Back. All right, the new film Bring Her Back just dropped. It is a brand new horror film. It is I have seen it. There are major spoilers for Bring Her Back in this content. I am an evangelical Christian, and I see horror movies not often. In fact, I'm very careful about the number of horror movies that I intake. The reason why is I don't go to movies for fun. I go to movies to learn. I go to movies to improve. I go to movies to challenge myself, right? And what's really interesting is horror is a fascinating genre. So one, I'm very picky about what horror movies I like, and I think this and I didn't really like horror movies until one very significant horror movie, which was Midsummer, and that was really the beginning of my relationship with A24, and it has transformed my relationship with horror. And by the way, um, Bring Her Back is an A24 film. So the first one was Midsummer. The second one was Hereditary. The third one was these are all A24. Was Talk to Me, and then the final one the latest one. That's the correct way to say it. The latest one I've seen is Bring Her Back. Right. So the first three movies that I talked about, they're absolutely terrifying. But even more than that, they really have one of the reasons why I'm so interested in these A24 films is because I really don't is they teach me about my evangelical Christianity. And the reason why is there is something very unique and very special happening at A24. I don't know how they did this because it's clear I don't think anyone there is an evangelical Christian. However, among the lost, um, among the lost, there is this group of people who know the Bible well. The sharpest edge I've ever seen on this was the book Spin. I read Spin, and I actually understood the book of Revelation better than many pastors have preached it. But the guy who wrote Spin was absolutely not an evangelical Christian, right? And I think that's what's happening with A24. A24 is making films that are horror movies that discuss the supernatural, fully respecting the supernatural laws that are clearly illuminated, clearly defined within the Holy Bible. So all four of those movies that I just talked about, every single thing in them, um, an evangelical Christian would have no problems understanding and actually believing could happen, right? So, let me give you an example. And actually, to better understand this, I ended up seeing The Nun, right? And it wasn't even the first Nun; it was just like the third Nun or something like that. But it was garbage. It was just absolute garbage, and it was clear that the people who wrote The Nun did not understand the supernatural from a biblical perspective at all, right? Hereditary is completely biblical. Everything in Hereditary absolutely could happen. There's the way demons possess people, all the ramifications of demon possession. It's straight. It's very contiguous with what evangelical Christians realize, or with what evangelical Christians believe about demons, about angels, about all of that. Right now, Bring Her Back. First of all, is an absolutely terrifying movie. I will say I absolutely covered my eyes about 10 times in the film. I literally just could not watch some of the scenes. It was so powerful, so terrifying. But this again really dealt with demon possession. But what was really fascinating in it was that it it really it was so like parallel with what the Bible teaches about demons. And one of the things is most humans are, especially the lost, can't tell a difference between an angel and a demon, right? So this woman was essentially dropping a demon into a child, right? And then preparing that demon coded child to be a conduit to bring her daughter back into a new body, right? And terrifying, horribly scary concept, but really fascinating, right? And I think what is really scary is that if you're an evangelical Christian, you know demon possession is absolutely a real thing, right? And so, but it's very rarely talked about in the Christian community. It's talked about, I think it's talked a lot about in the Catholic community, but most evangelical Christians do not believe that. What evangelical Christians believe about Catholicism is that you can be saved as a Catholic, but it's despite your Catholicism. Catholicism really can't lead anybody to a relationship with Jesus Christ. And the reason why is generally they're confused about worship. They worship the Pope, they worship Mary, they worship Jesus, and and only Jesus Christ can bring you to heaven, right? Like Mary was a human woman, the Pope is a human man. Neither one of them deserve to be worshipped in any way. So there's just confusion there, right? But among the evangelical Christian community, we don't talk about demonism. We don't talk about demon possession, right? But A24 is having a very deep, a very interesting conversation about demon possession. So I thought this was really fascinating, and it's probably the most clear depiction of what can happen when people are in grief and then they attach to the occult, right? And I really think it was, and I also kind of think it's helpful to some evangelical Christians, because it also shows just the folly of it. It doesn't work. The costs are too high. It's really abominable, right? And but I will say this: many evangelical Christians could not watch A24 films, and that gets to another issue, which is the stumbling block issue. So the stumbling block issue is that, if it's going to be a stumbling block for you, you shouldn't do it, right? Now, I believe I'm fortunate. I don't believe that any of these films are stumbling blocks for me, and I do actually really feel that they are helpful, because they do kind of fill a gap that the evangelical Christian community leaves. We generally do not talk about demon possession at all, which is really interesting. Fantastic film, 5 out of 5 stars, absolutely terrifying. And just a warning, do not mess with the occult. Now, what do I mean by occult? Astrology, tarot cards, horoscopes, crystals, all of that. And there's quite a bit more. So be very careful. Be very careful. These are doors to very dark places. But if you are an evangelical Christian and you don't think it's a stumbling block, I would highly recommend bring her back. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.